It's a Thursday night edition, right, of Wartime radio program. And tonight we're talking with special guest VSOF, who I actually had to call him on Mega over here to show you just how easy it is to use Mega, which is pretty cool. This is the Mega Messenger / chat, right? It's kind of like Skype or Zoom. And this is cool because you can share screens. This is how Telegram is supposed to work, but Telegram is very, very framey and laggy, and it's not very good for this shit. How are you doing? VSOF is here for the second time, and the first time we had a fantastic conversation. You blew our minds. So a lot of people want you to come back, and I think it was definitely time to get you back in June and catch up with you again. How are you, Zen Master? Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Flood. Good to see you guys again. Yeah, we had a good talk last time. I liked it. We covered so many things. It was kind of crazy, but that's all right. It was a good introduction to what I teach and what's going on in the world and what's wrong with it, basically.
Well, I'm glad that you took the opportunity to come back and visit us. I made your own logo, and now when you talk, your logo will move. Oh, wait, you can't see that because you need to be able to see OBS here. This is how it is when you're streaming. You're a streamer and a content creator.
I just wanted to watch FTJ for chat and whatnot tonight in case anybody had any questions.
Good.
Plus,
I'm glad you are.
watching the memes as well. It's always fun.
We talked about a lot of stuff last time. You even did a review before the show so as not to double cover or, bore people with stuff they already know. So people, if you have any questions, feel free tonight to ask those. But you blew our mind last time just with general knowledge. But I know that we did cover a lot of ground. And if it was in typical fashion, it was all over the place. And I think people have a general idea that you've got a school. Essentially, you teach in lesson format with content that you made. Very important skills, knowledge and understanding of law in general, and then of some specific aspects of the law that most people generally have absolutely no clue about or that they even exist. So I thought for the second visit, I would generally kind of just stick around letting you just cook. I mean, if you wanted to, I've generally been sticking on things that people have been missing lately. When I talked to Night Nation last night, I wanted to kind of talk about, like, as a movement, what kind of things are we missing from a content perspective or just an overall perspective. I would kind of keep it the same tonight if you're interested. But I'm sure you see this kind of what all your content is about, right? Is things that people are missing.
Well, yeah, exactly. And just to run down kind of what we covered last time. So if anybody wants to go back and watch the first interview, last time we covered consent, contracts, what it means to ordain and establish. We covered vested powers, Roman civil law. We covered aspects of title from cars to land. We covered birth registration. We covered some presumptions. We talked about 13th Amendment, and we talked about the VSOF organization, which I'll be happy to cover again tonight. And we talked about will, and that will is the most important thing regarding property. And if you have your will taken away from you, then you don't have property. And we talked about the situation of how the Jews have taken over the law, what they did, how they use ritualistic mocking of the victim to talk down to us all the time. And we covered a little bit about religion and a little bit about who my mentors were. And at the very end, we covered just a little bit about the grand jury and habeas corpus, because I think somebody had some questions about it. But yeah, to start off, as far as you guys can see the little emblem bouncing, so I don't have to pull it up, the VSOF is based in one single understanding that all of us are sovereign. And that's what the little S means in the dead center. That understanding that you are sovereign is where you should start at all times when dealing with anything in the world, but particularly with anyone or any group of people calling themselves government. And then the four quadrants around sovereignty are what you have to have in order to maintain your sovereignty. And they're color-coded. And to start off with the R is self-reliance, and then it goes self-awareness, self-governance, and self-defense. So yeah, and then the circles are basically around sovereignty. The first circle around sovereignty is your self-reliance, your self-awareness, your self-governance, and your own self-defense. And then the next circle outside of that is your family or your tribe. Next circle outside of that would be your community or your county. And then the final circle outside of that would be your state or your nation. And when you put all those together, along with grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which is the trivium, it's the first 3 of the 7 liberal arts. And if you put the trivium together with the VSOF, you're going to have a very powerful virus detection device for Jewish bullshit. And to expand on the trivium, kind of what we were talking about pre-class, was the understanding of the trivium is where we used to get what was called a liberal education. Now, I don't mean liberal as in communist. I mean liberal literally from where the root comes from. The root word being liber, which is where you get the word liberty. It's also where you get the word library. So to have a liberal education means that you're focused on freedom, that you understand liberty. Now, that's not how it happens to go down any longer, because we have been inundated with what's called the Prussian education system, which is basically a system of rote memorization that doesn't allow or doesn't even want to focus on the capacity of the student to be able to learn on their own, to literally have their own self-governance and say, okay, how do I learn things on my own volition? Well, there's a system to that. And it's called the 7 liberal arts. And the first 3 are the trivium. So you have grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So grammar is your who, what, when, where. And then your logic is your why. So when you come upon something, doesn't matter what it is in this world, whether it be some form of government, whether it be an organization, whether it be what somebody did, all of this works from a standpoint of how you would necessarily bring it to court. Okay, who was there? All right, what did they do? Where did they do it? When did they do it? And then the why is after you have those other W's. So you have the 5 W's in grammar and logic. And then rhetoric is the capacity to be able to argue those points and argue your point, your standing against somebody else's argument, or just to write it down on a piece of paper and say, this is how I came to this conclusion.
Right.
So in grammar, logic, and rhetoric, you have to follow that order. And if you don't, the people that will try and confuse you and will try and brainwash you into just doing what they say, they'll jump straight to the rhetoric part. So they'll take all of the other 5 W's out of the situation and they'll say, hey, this is how we're going to do this, right? Well, someone who talks like that is a sophist, someone who is sophisticated. And you hear politicians talk like this all the time. You hear attorneys talk like this all the time. And you hear judges talk like this and cops and whatever. Well, if they're pulling away all of the 5 W's and they're just telling you how this is going to happen, well, that's tyranny. And if they don't approach you in truth with the 5 W's, then you know that they're lying to you and trying to manipulate you from the beginning. So the trivium was a system of systematically figuring out the world, and it was laid down by the ancient Greeks. And then, so that's the trivium. So then the quadrivium, the next 4, is mathematics, and then mathematics in space, which is geometry, and then mathematics in time, which is music, and then mathematics in space and time, which is astronomy. So if you don't learn them in order and all the way to the end, you're going to have a very difficult time understanding your place in this universe. And
probably easily enslaved too, huh, at that point.
Yes, exactly. Which is why it was stripped from the one-room schoolhouses and why we ended up having, quote unquote, government education from the feds to begin with, because it was a requirement to remove a liberal education, that sort of liberal education, and remove the study of civics from the schools so that no one understood what their rights were, because that's what the study of civics is. It's the study of one's personal rights. So if you strip them of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and you strip them of civics, well, what you're left with is a pretty dumbed down, easily programmable robot that will follow whatever you tell them to follow without question. Because if you teach someone to read, but then you don't teach them how to use a system to discern what they're reading, literacy itself then just becomes another form of slavery without some form of critical thinking applied to it. And that's where you want your slaves to be. You want them to be able to read to go follow your orders, but you never want them to be able to question why they're given that order to begin with.
Right.
That's the last thing you want them to do.
Becomes the process that prohibits this from happening. You can't just jump to a conclusion or a straw man or some logical fallacy like we talked about earlier, because you've essentially missed a step in the trivium. And without any understanding of the quadrivium, yes, you probably sound a lot like sub-Saharan African, just running your mouth basically without any thought as to what you're saying or what that could imply or what that could result in, right? Like there are consequences to like running one's mouth. And so like that can get you in a lot of trouble. And Black people do this all the time. And so much so that they would assault people. We've seen all this crime happen, and the law has to look the other way because they're actually that different on a social level, right? Like they don't process anything with the trivium. They're just literally like, well, a little bit like monkeys. Yeah, I hate to say it, they're a little bit like monkeys, but they are.
Yeah, anybody that doesn't have the capacity for critical thinking just ends up perpetuating cynicism, which is it's a very oddly spelled word. I just put it up on the screen. So cynicism is a noun. It means automatic speech without thought of the meaning of the words spoken. So when you have people running around talking about, well, freedom and democracy and free speech and justice, you're a parrot because you don't understand what any of those words mean.
That's citizen. I've never heard this word, cynicism.
Yeah, when I found it, I made the yeah, exactly. When I found it, I made the meme because I was like, I never knew this word either. But it totally explains the way the troglodytes operate. They're just a bunch of parrots. They have no idea what they're talking about because they've never used some form of critical thinking to go and look these words up and then determine if they should be saying them or not. Like particularly in America, the idiots always want to talk about our democracy and we're spreading democracy. Well, you don't live in a democracy. You live in a constitutional republic. Maybe you should learn the difference between what those two forms of government are. So you stop trying to push us into something that we're not. Because all democracy is 51% of the populace realizing that they can vote themselves gibs from the treasury, and then it collapses, which is exactly what the ancient Greeks were well aware of, and they absolutely despise the idea of democracy for good reason, because it ends up in slavery.
Yes.
Only when you have a group of people that are sovereign, that fully respect the rights and the property of their fellow sovereigns, that's the only way that you have a nation that's altogether totality-wise free and also individually free. And Jefferson stated it in the Declaration of Independence, even though it's debatable if Jefferson actually wrote it. A lot of people think that Thomas Paine actually wrote it. But anyway, it says
and this
in the Declaration...
must necessarily be a cornerstone of nationalism, then obviously...
It is a cornerstone of nationalism. It is exactly. And the part in the Declaration of Independence states that we collectively pledge to ourselves and each other our lives, our property, and our sacred honor. Okay, if I pledge to you, Flood, my life, my property, and my sacred honor, and you do the same to me, then whenever you see somebody coming and damaging or attacking my property, you realize that it's your duty to stop them, as it is my duty to stop them when I see someone damaging your property.
Yes.
And that's how you get a coherent society. If you don't have that, then it's shenanigans and everybody's out for themselves, and you end up with Jew America, which is exactly what we have now. It didn't start like that, but it certainly is like that now because of this incessant brainwashing of people not realizing what reality is as far as your form of government, what law you have, where you even get your ideas from, because your absolute lack of using the trivium has placed you into a situation of which you're always going to be woefully behind everybody else. And since you brought it up, use of fallacies, logical fallacies, to deceive people. Now, I did a class on the Trivium a little while ago, and I put together this list. It's 39 pages of logical fallacies. Now, I don't expect everybody to go and read this. However, I'll be happy to put a link into it in the show notes after you put this class up so that people can look at it. Because a lot of these things, when you start learning logical fallacies are, I would say, not analogous to, but similar to learning maxims of law. So if you learn your logical fallacies, then you can use the Trivium more correctly, more wisely. If you learn maxims of law, you'll be able to understand law more easily and more completely. They're kind of sort of like a cheat code in a sense.
This is like a lexicon basically of the same.
Yes. So, and I'm just maybe I'll just pick one here.
Sure. Yeah. Read a couple.
Okay. Like this one I'm not familiar with, so I'll read it. All right. The appeal to pity. The fallacy of urging an audience to root for the underdog, regardless of the issues at hand. A classic example is, those poor cute little squeaky mice are being gobbled up by mean, nasty cats 10 times their size. A contemporary example might be America's uncritical popular support of Arab Spring movement in 2010-2012, in which people, the underdogs, were seen to be heroically throwing off cruel dictatorships, a movement that has resulted in retrospective chaos, impoverishment, anarchy, mass suffering, civil war, the regional collapse of civilization, and rise of extremism, and the largest refugee crisis since World War II. Sound familiar?
Hi.
As to what's going on right now, you know?
A little bit. Yep.
So yes, okay, scroll down here. Let's try this one. Argument from ignorance. The fallacy that since we don't know, or can never know, or cannot prove, whether a claim is true or false, it must be false, or it must be true. E.g., scientists are never going to be able to positively prove their crazy theory that humans evolved from other creatures because they weren't there to see it. So that proves that Genesis' six-day creation account is literally true as written. This fallacy also includes attacking the evidence, also known as whataboutism, the missing link fallacy. So, example, some or all of key evidence is missing, incomplete, or even faked. What about that? That proves you're wrong and I'm right. You see a lot of logical fallacies. Well, actually, I would say the vast majority of social media platforms are inundated with nothing
I'm going to
but
say you
logical
don't want to
fallacies.
know all these. Yeah, you don't want to know what all these are because you'd live in hell if you did. You would live in a constant hell of eternal fallacy.
Yeah, well, welcome to my world. Because once you start seeing these things and understanding what they are, you're like, oh my God, they're everywhere. But that's the lack of understanding the Trivium and basing yourself in natural law and saying to yourself, honestly, hey, I want to know what is. I do not want to be fooled by what is not. I do not want to blindly follow what somebody else says. In fact, I don't even want to blindly follow what somebody might write down, no matter how floral the verbiage may be, no matter how well they might make an argument. If they're not basing that argument on grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the 5 W's and how, well, then they're perpetuating an ideology or an idea that they themselves have not proven to themselves and that they themselves are spreading, knowingly being ignorant of those facts, of the 5 W's and how. And that's dangerous. But that's the world we live in now.
Yeah, it's so ubiquitous that this almost would come off to somebody as like Gnostic Kabbalism, wouldn't it? But really, this is just, we're talking about the basics of understanding cognition, how to think critically. And it probably sounds like voodoo to a lot of people, right?
Well, I would say a lot. Yeah, I would say a lot of the logical fallacies, when you dig deep into them and you start to read a lot of them, they are very much, that's a very good analogy, that they're, in a sense, the way that the Jewish Kabbalists,
they sound Jewy. Yeah, they sound Jewy.
Well, exactly. That's exactly what they are. Because people who intend to lie to you, people who intend to alter your consciousness, particularly without your volition, there has to be a method to do that. And logical fallacies are very much how they do that. Just in the two examples that I just gave, even though there's over 100 of them on that page. And like I said, I'll make sure to put the link into the show notes on all your platforms. I think I know all your platforms, but I'll give you the link in Mega, and then you can also throw it into the ones that I don't know in there, and then you can spread them around to everybody else.
Yeah, I'll make sure to add stuff to the show notes as well. So I mean, it's very interesting, but you can understand, and it doesn't take a genius to understand it. If you have two cultures of people, and one culture of people adopts this understanding, and then starts to codify law based on that understanding, based on those same fundamentals, and then they particularly and maliciously keep you outside of that system of language, outside of that system of law, you're in for bad trouble if you're not one of them. It's obvious that one civilization is going to be enslaved by the other, and it's going to be by the one that developed and codified these systems of thought and that use them against or use them by depriving the other group of them, right? Like group inclusion is more than just including your own group, it's excluding the other groups, right? So you would not teach them how to think this way. In fact, you would teach them another way, a detrimental way of thinking. If you wanted to conquer a people but enslave them and not destroy them, is exactly what you would do, is you would deprive them of understanding these common basic fundamentals, and then you would lead them astray so that they didn't accidentally stumble upon the right way to think about things, which seems simple, right? It seems simple to talk about, but you're really talking about something that we all can like agree on, but like we all also can look at a world that's full of these fucking people, NPCs that don't process this shit. They're NPCs, like you say, they're just running around like infants, abandoning their estate everywhere. You know what I mean? That's what's happening. It's insane. And it's got to be hellish.
Exactly right. Because a differential in knowledge in any group of people will end up with a same differential in power between those people, because you simply cannot get to their level of understanding if all you're doing is constantly being led by them in a way that is meant to diminish your mental capacity. You're always going to be conquered. There's no question about that. And I put up that funny little patch. I don't know if that's a CIA patch, but I always found it was funny. It's definitely some sort of glow nigger patch. But it says, "You've just been fucked by psyops because physical wounds heal." And that's a damn good point.
It's very Jewy too. Yeah. It's true. It's and the psyops are deep, man. And I think everybody's kind of had at least some degree of experience. It's almost on a parabolic curve with awareness, right? Like the more aware you become, the more paranoid you'll be, because everything is a kind of a psyop, and there's so many of these running on us constantly. Not to go like way too wide in general, but a lot of your individual lessons. Like I'm looking at your content here on your page, and I'll put this on the screen for the people. But you get very specific about this, so you're not just a generalist. And somebody in chat had a question, and I hopefully this doesn't derail. Hopefully this will just kind of accentuate the point. But he was asking about if you've ever represented yourself in court based on some of your lessons on like sovereignty, admiralty, all this kind of stuff. Have you ever been in court and argued any of those arguments personally, or have you had any of your students in that situation, and how did that work out for them?
Yeah, that's where I started. I started when I was, I don't know, maybe like 18 or 19, something like that. And I got a traffic ticket, and I was like, okay. So I go to court and I watch like all these just stupid cows just wandering up to the bench and just handing over $100, $200, $500, $1,500, whatever. And I started to make a little calculation, and I said, okay, there's that. Well, by the time I got called, that court had already raked in thousands of dollars. And I had to stop and say, wait a second. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but something doesn't feel right. And that's where I started. And then from that, I started to always, whenever I got a traffic ticket, I would file literally dozens of motions to dismiss on all kinds of different matters. And I could get into that, but because you'd have to
you don't have to dive deep into it.
Yeah, you'd have to know a lot of these things, like what I'm talking about regarding jurisdiction, which we covered a little bit last time, but I have classes on it. And so anyway, yes, I've done that multiple times. And a lot of the times when people win the way that the VSOF teaches them how to go about this is that a lot of times they won't even like dismiss the case. All of a sudden the entire case will just be gone. You'll go to the clerk of the court and you'll say, hey, I want to look up my case. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. That case doesn't exist. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day. Right? Because they have to ghost the entire case because they don't want anybody to be able to come back and look it up on the public record and say, oh, wow, these are all the things this guy filed. I'm going to file the same thing. Right? They don't want that.
Yeah, they can't have a precedent. I got you.
Yeah. Well, It's not just about precedent. It's about an unbelievable amount of teaching capacity within a single case. Because if you have 24 motions to dismiss or more, all based on proper reasons to dismiss it, and you give that to somebody else that has, say, never studied law, but they're diligent and they have patience and they have a strong will, well, then they're going to learn what it is that are in those motions that say, hey, you can't do this. And that's a level of teaching that they can't afford at all for any reason, no matter if it's mortgages, traffic tickets, whatever it may be. The last thing they want is the sheep to be able to realize that, hey, there's a open space in the fence over there. Why don't we just all walk through it?
Yeah, so they'll just make the whole damn case just fucking disappear.
Yes.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some people in the VSOF now. There's a couple gentlemen in Colorado. One of them, he doesn't have a driver's license. He doesn't have any tags on his truck, but the sheriff and all of the sheriff's deputies know who he is. He's actually sued them before, politely, and they don't pull him over anymore because the sheriff literally said to him after he got done with everything he needed to get done with, he did the vocational science freedom status doc set, he got out and he served the county and the sheriff. The sheriff said to him later on, he said, the only ticket that I can write to you is a ticket for never having a license, because he surrendered his license back to the state and says, I don't want this contract anymore. So once he did that and he made everybody aware of it, the sheriff was like, yeah, the only ticket I can write you is like what I would write a 16-year-old if he jumped in a car before he got his license. Because it's the license itself that subjects you to all of the inferior court bullshit. It's what forces you into being subject to the statutes, acts, ordinances, and codes, because it's all contractual.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, if you have my screen up for a second, I was just going to kind of thumb through and just give people just a real simple overview of like at least what's on Rumble. So
Sure.
The classes are focused in the playlists. So if you just hit all and you just come to my page, it's going to look like a crazy clusterfuck. But if you go to playlists, then you can see the classes as they're organized by subject as to what they are. So the master classes are the rebuttable presumptions, the ins and outs of court, the totality of law, and the redemption of your estate. And then that's going to give you the background of what's going on, why it's going on. Well, it's going to give you your 5 W's and your how. And then if you want a really deep dive into how long this has been happening, how long the Jew has been doing this, and how long secret societies have been occulting knowledge, then I highly suggest that everybody watch the VSOF timeline class. It's titled Lies and Thievery of 4,000 Years, Old World History Anew. And I go all the way back to the start of written law and bring everybody forward to now following American history and American jurisprudence. But there's a lot of English jurisprudence in there. There's a lot of Roman history and Roman jurisprudence in there because everything builds off of the past. Systems of law build off the past, and they don't just magically go away. They're still there. And particularly they're there if you contract yourself into them. So I have things done by playlists, and then I also have the quadrants done by playlists as well, for the exception of self-governance, because I have so much on self-governance that if you look at the playlists, or even if you just look at individual classes, they're all color-coded. So if you see a little blue dot in the front, that's self-governance. If you see a little green dot in the front, that's self-defense. See a little orange dot in the front, self-awareness, and then self-reliance is a little red dot. So you can just look at the titles of the classes and go, oh, okay, so this is on self-governance and self-awareness. Or, oh, this is on self-governance and self-defense. And the playlists are laid out as in the same way. But I just don't have a single playlist for all of self-governance because there's a lot more of that topic than any of the other quadrants. Now I'm going to work on changing this over the next few years. And I want to get more into self-awareness. I want to get more into self-reliance because I see what's coming. And if people don't become more self-reliant and get out of this system, there's probably going to be a point here coming faster than most people realize that if you haven't gotten out, you're going to be permanently stuck in, because that's what they want. They want zero capacity for your own volition. They want zero ability of your own self-sovereignty, and they want zero ability for you to even so much as purchase anything without their permission.
Yeah,
and
full submission, right? Like this is full dominance, and it's not far away. What CBDCs and social credit scores, and they pretty much got it locked down, huh? Like they're already 90% of the way to this.
Yeah, the military calls it full spectrum dominance, which is a scary idea. That means your mind, all logistics, all the food, the land, total control. Now, that's a horrific position to be in, but that's what they're trying to do, because their systems of slavery, we were just talking a little bit about how they do it by occulting knowledge, taking away the capacity of logical thought. Well, when you also occult law, then you can take over a whole entire nation and hardly anybody has the slightest clue what happened, because they're like, oh, that's the law. Okay, I guess I got to follow that. No.
We see this happening too, but it's over generations, right? It's very slow, very insidious, and people will tolerate things like things you didn't tolerate as a young man, you'll tolerate even as an older man. So imagine, 2 or 3 generations down the road, if they can just continue on the same path with the same, slow pressure over 100 years, they will be able to hatch things on the grandchildren that the grandparents could have never fathomed, including slavery and complete usury, complete surveillance. These are things that would not have been tolerated just one generation ago.
That's right.
Right.
Because we had the capacity to still have critical thinking, and we're taught critical thinking, and our grandparents and our parents knew critical thinking. Well, that's out the window now. Now you just have 100% pure propaganda, because propaganda wins wars, particularly the war against your own mind, particularly the war that they have against the entire populace of the planet, because they want their one world government. They want a world court, and they want everybody to be part of a world bank. Now, not to say that we're not already, as far as the banking side of things is concerned, because every single country that has a central bank is part of the international monetary system. It's part of the IMF. It's part of the globalists' World Bank. And
right. They're already commodified, right? They're already numbers.
That's right, because the IMF has what's called special drawing rights. So when a country has special drawing rights from the IMF, you have to question, okay, what are they drawing off of? Well, they're drawing off the productive value of the people that have been registered within that country to perpetuate their global commerce system, where you are a resource. You're a human resource. And they've already got that fully in place. That's what happens every single fucking day. But nobody pays any attention to it because they don't think about registration. They don't think about, yeah, I have a human resource department at this corporation that I work for.
And you had to get certified to even run your forklift or whatever, right? Like everything is
total control.
Is a granting of rights and control. Yes. Contracts. It's all contracts.
Yes, it's all contractual, because they can't simply enslave people brute force-esque, right? The days of brute slavery, hardcore chains and shit are gone. They realize that really doesn't work anymore. Even, not to say that it doesn't happen, because you still have child trafficking and all kinds of other shit that goes on. However, they don't dare do it to an entire populace of people, and they don't have to, because now they have slavery 2.0, and soon to be 3.0, where they'll be able to fuck with things like literally your DNA, which they're already doing through GMOs. But when you get to 6G and you start putting nanoparticles in everybody and you start giving them kill shots that also put that shit into you, and you start reverse engineering things like being able to put vaccines in food, that's the point in time where you cannot get away from it. So you have to destroy it before it becomes that unstoppable monster. And if we don't do that, we are condemning all generations after us to an absolute hell on earth. This is it. This is the last point in time where we can stop it. And I can't possibly get that across to people, the level of severity of that, to the point at which I want to, because they would rather wallow in their ignorance. They'd rather stick their head in the sand and be like, oh, it's so far down the road. It's not going to happen to me. You stupid fucker. It is happening to you. You don't have the slightest idea what's happening to you already. Well, it's not that bad. I still can watch my television. I can still go watch a ball game. Wow.
Right. I can still grill chicken for $17.50 a pound. And I can still, no, this is true. This consumer culture is not ours. It's not natural. It's not fulfilling. It doesn't make people happy. It makes people sick. And then that in turn fuels other very parasitic industries that just happen to be the most powerful industries on earth. That's really weird how that works.
Particularly banking. You talk about the most powerful industries on earth, the purchasing power of the dollar, right? Since the Federal Reserve came into existence. And I put it up on the screen. So 1913, so you say $1. Okay. $1 prior to 1913, the definition of a dollar is a Spanish milled dollar of a certain amount of grains of silver. So that was a dollar. Okay. And a dollar would buy you XYZ back then. Then the Jews bring in the Federal Reserve System. And there's a whole bunch of history behind that that I want to get into with Wilson and everything else. But just looking purely at what they've done to destroy the money. So it just falls off a cliff shortly after 1913. What happened? Oh, the Great Depression happened. Oh, it just happened? No, it was fucking engineered. They did it on purpose.
Right.
The same way that the Rothschilds crashed the entire English stock market when they perpetuated a lie and said that Napoleon had won the Battle of Waterloo. They purposely lied to everybody so that there'd be chaos and everybody would sell, which is exactly what they did. And the Rothschilds swept in and bought everything up for pennies on the dollar. After that point in time, the Rothschilds basically owned England of any substantive validity when you talk about who owns what. Right. So then they had to do the same thing with us. They had to get their central bank back into position. There had been central banks in America prior, but after Jackson beat the shit out of them and everybody realized what they were, well, that stayed in full force and effect for quite a long period of time. Until after the Civil War, and then Reconstruction, and then, oh, we're going to have government schools, and oh, now you're going to register your property, and now you're going to register your children. Once all that was in place, here comes the Federal Jew Reserve back to bite you in the ass, so that they could do this, so they could whittle your buying power down to nothing. So as you see, that's only 2013 where it ends, and so it's 5 cents. Your dollar now buys 5 cents compared to where it did in 1913. And of course, this is even prior to the bank bailout. So this is nothing compared to what it is now.
Yeah. So we're down to like 0.2 cents at this point. Like, but that is, things have fallen off parabolically. And of course, once they started printing, once they got all the gold out, they ran on paper money. They ran on basically debt and notes. And then, they built systems of debt based on now property, like you said, land, property.
Yeah, it's all hypothecation. It's all hypothecation, betting on this, betting on that, betting on this, betting on that, to say, oh, we're going to continue to make this money out of nothing by creating more debt. And I just put a terrifying graph up, which is the national debt from 1900 all the way to 2020. It is a unbelievably perfect hockey stick. Okay.
Now, this is just their appropriation of assets too, by the way. They're finding ways to
Well, this is the
monetize
national debt.
processes, right? And like
Yeah.
natural processes and things that happen automatically. They're finding ways to stake that off as well and call, and have own rights to those things, make profits off those things, and tax people off of those same things. So we're seeing a full-blown monetization of every kind of material in the universe. It seems like intellectual property, physical property, all those things, they're finding a way to own all of it and basically contract all of that from you. Like any rights that you have to anything in it, you'll beg them to waive your own rights. And that's exactly what they do. They make things bad through Hegelian dialectics until you've asked them to enslave you.
That's a very good point. So how are they doing that right now regarding, say, intellectual property? Okay. So we're all using computers. So when you go and you decide to use a program on your computer, or you decide to use a platform that, say, you want to put up some videos on, like Rumble or whatever else. Okay. You ever go and read that little thing called the user end license agreement?
No, I don't read it.
That's your contract. Right. No one reads it. But that is your contract that you're willfully entering into. Now, that's called a performance contract, because once you're given an offer from somebody else, and to make this really simple, I'll just make another analogy regarding what a performance contract is. So say you wander over your neighbor's house looks fucked up. You say, hey, neighbor, I'd like to paint your house. And they say, sure, you can paint my house. And they write out a contract, and we both agree to it, and we both sign it. But the contract says that I'm not under any obligation to finish painting the house until I start painting the house. Meaning the second that my brush touches paint and then touches the side of your wall, now that contract is in full force and effect. Okay, now think about what a user end license agreement is. It says, well, if you decide to use our programs, or if you decide to do any part of what's in this user end license agreement, you now agree to the agreement. It is your performance which binds you. That's a performance contract. And there are more performance contracts out here, particularly in the digital world, than anybody ever would even know about. Because you're right, you don't ever read the user end license agreement. Well, I said, you know what? Maybe I should start reading these things. I've now collected hundreds of user end license agreements, and holy shit, are they terrifying. Like, there was a joke about the user end license agreement. I think it was Apple did it. They did it as a joke, or a social experiment. I don't know. But they created a user end license agreement, and I don't know what particularly it was for in Apple. But as a joke, they put in there that they had the right to your DNA and like your firstborn child and a couple other really whack ass things. And they said when they got cornered by it, that was just a joke. We're just kidding. Well, were they? I don't know.
Right. We're just Jews.
Right. Well,
that's all.
You just give us whatever we want. Sure. Exactly. But it was a terrifying prospect that no one understands the basis of contract law, and that no one understands particularly what a performance contract is, which is kind of exactly what your licenses are, like your driver's license or your building permit license or whatever else. Inside the license, it says, well, if you start building this and you, as an infant, came to beg permission from daddy to go build whatever, a well, say, of something that you need for your sustenance, that thing called water, well, then you're bound by the agreements of what the rest of those things say in the contract. And that's really scary that people do not read contract. I would say it's probably the single greatest thing in law that people do not pay enough attention to, and that bind them more than anything else in this world are performance contracts and contracts in general, particularly with the government and particularly with corporations. Because once they take it over, meaning once you're entered into that contract, your substantive rights protected by the Constitution can't help you anymore. You can literally contract your rights away, and the reason they can do this, within the Constitution. People say that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. Well, fuck if they can't, because in both state and federal constitutions, there's a very specific clause in all of them that says basically, and I'm going to paraphrase, that there shall be no law passed abrogating the right of contract. So what does that mean? It means if you enter into a contract and you do it willingly, knowingly, and it's a valid contract, meaning it's not based in fraud or it's not saying a license to kill or some shit like that, it means that you can waive other things that you own, or you waive your rights that you thought you had because you didn't expressly, because the contract said so. And a very good point of this, or I would say the biggest situation of this, is people bitching all the time about, oh, well, I have a freedom of speech. I have my right to freedom of speech. No, you don't. If you're on their platform, they can pull you off of that platform and they don't have to tell you anything because you violated the user and license agreement. That's it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they mix that up, right? Like free speech doesn't necessarily, that doesn't rule in the corporate house, right? Like those may be rights you have in public under the government, but they are entitlements or privileges, or in many cases, just services under these contracts with these corporations who are also legal entities who have rights, and you can actually offend their rights, and they can actually action you as an individual in a lot of cases where that wouldn't be the case if they didn't have, like the same rights that persons have. You know what I mean? So corporations are now equated and given equality to persons. And in a lot of cases, their money and power, gives them even more, it just gives them more power over people. But corporations are who enforce the policies that affect our lives, actually. Problem is, like most people, they're not gonna get sued by their software company for making making something based on IP that didn't belong to them, based on their acceptance of some terms and conditions. Most folks aren't going to make a hit song on Suno, but when they do, Suno will be there to say, you sign these terms and conditions, we own the rights to that music. And this is a big thing in AI, right? This is the big battle in the new frontier, is rights with AI, and who owns the rights, who own the training data, who own the AI itself.
Right.
This is all still being worked out because identity itself now is questionable. It's more plastic than it was before.
Yeah, exactly. Most people think about their constitutional rights in the way that I kind of just put the meme up. The constitutional rights are the biggest, greatest things, and your feelings, fuck off. Don't give a shit. Okay. That would be true if you hadn't waived them and stuck yourself under contracts that you agreed to. So the point is that remove yourself from all contracts. Remember, like I said, the guy in Colorado, he surrendered his license, which is something you can do. You can surrender everything. In fact, I know people that have surrendered their Social Security number. In fact, the Social Security Administration even has a form for it. So, which strangely enough, I think that, they do, but I think they might have gotten rid of it because somebody else asked me and they went looking for it and they're like, I can't find that form. And I'm like, oh, fuck, did they get rid of that now? Because every single time that I've found a remedy, created remedy, taught what needs to be done, the attorney will come up behind me and then they'll alter the conditions. And that's what the attorney does. The attorney's purpose in the world is to create situations and base Roman civil law on market conditions so that they can always extract their 33 1/3% out of your ass without you realizing what's going on.
Right.
It's a terrifying prospect.
That's pretty profound, actually. We think about that. Don't think about that too much. But what you teach here is not just, the facts when it comes to looking at things, looking at things in this way, but also you mentioned remedies. These are remedies. You have class after class after class, and I see at least 20 playlists here with, anywhere from 5 to 30 videos in them. And these all cover all of these topics. Like you said, some are based generally on the quadrants or on whole aspects of the philosophy and of the school. But then a lot of stuff like self-governance, you've had to deal a lot more into. So there's quite a bit to be studied here. It's all color-coded even by title. And so you're not one to just sit around on problems and not develop solutions and then not put those out there. You've been doing this for a long time. Have you seen success? I mean, do you feel like it's been successful? Have you? I'm sure that you probably engaged quite a few people in your classes. You probably get some feedback, right? So generally speaking, this stuff works, and you've had it work in court. You've got cases documented.
Yeah,
That,
I feel it works well for people that take the time to learn it. You can't
right.
just you cannot just jump in on the deep end of the pool and be like, "Oh, I'm going to go swim, 20 miles." No, you didn't even bother to learn how to swim. And then on top of it, you got a bunch of sharks underneath you that are just going to eat you because you have no idea how diligent these sharks are about making sure that they do eat you. So you have to put in the time. And that goes with anything that's worth doing. Anything that's worth doing is worth putting in the time and worth doing well. And the study of civics is something that should be a lifelong understanding. It shouldn't just be one little class in grade school or something called American government, right?
That's what I had.
Yeah,
Is what
exactly.
I had. That's what we got in school, right? It was one semester.
You need to absolutely devote yourself to the study of freedom. What is it? How do you have it? Who died to give it to you? And what are you doing to negate it? What are you doing to just say, "Oh, I don't need that. I'm fine." Or, "Oh, I don't need to look into that." Or, "Oh, I don't need to read that contract." You're destroying your own ability to stay sovereign. And you're also destroying your society's capacity to stay sovereign because your duty is to protect your fellow American, your fellow sovereign, in whatever way that is, and particularly in knowledge. Because knowledge, the differential in knowledge, like I said, is the difference in power. Well, if you're in a foxhole with somebody and you know that what they're doing to you is all mental, that's the war you're in, and you don't teach your fellow warrior how these weapons affect them, then you have failed in your duty, not only to yourself, but to him and to everybody else around you.
But aren't you supposed to attack everybody based on their religion?
Some people do. I think a lot of people attack a lot of people, unfortunately, based upon the knowledge that they do possess. Yeah, we were talking about that
and
earlier.
That you don't possess it, right? Because that's what it all is. Is like, I know something you don't know, or I have something you don't have, or I'm establishing some form of one-upmanship on you. Take that, bitch. You know what I mean? That's how it is with people. But there's not a lot of people who actually go through like the thoughtful creation of these things, and in the form of a platform that's not only digestible but coded and intelligent, right? Most people will literally just go dive for shit on YouTube or something that confirms their biases, and then that's what they kind of stick with. And then 10 years later, they're in the flat Earth fucking spaces. You know what I mean? It's
Oh, exactly. They get lost, and
it's
a
a
lot
disease,
of them,
right? Being stupid, being ignorant's a disease.
Well,
it gets worse over time.
Yeah, so is psychopathy, which is why I just put that meme up, because it made me think about our previous discussion about where are these people at? Like, why are there so many people that can't see what's going on? Or why are there so many people that keep perpetuating the evil in this world, which is exactly what this is? Because, folks, there's only two sides to this battle. It literally is good and evil. And I'm not trying to be clichéic. I'm simply saying that the perpetuation of ignorance is an evil. The perpetuation of slavery is an evil. And if you're on that side, you are perpetuating evil. And you need to come into the light and help your fellow American and your fellow brothers and sisters tribe the fuck up and teach them what they're missing. And the difference between, you think, well, how can people be evil? Okay, it's called biological psychopathy. People who are biological psychopaths, and what I'm showing here is a scan of the brain, okay? And the frontal lobe of the brain is what controls morality. It's what controls in a sense, your consciousness of what's right and what's wrong, okay? And it doesn't fully develop in people until about the age of 21, 22, depending, which is why you see so much crazy shit going on in colleges, because they really haven't had that fully developed yet. But the biological psychopath is absolutely 100% incapable of any empathy. They don't have the capacity for empathy.
See, it's not lit up where their empathy right there in the middle.
And it's not that they don't want to. It's like trying to ask somebody to type out a paper for you that doesn't have hands. They simply can't do it. And so what the psychopaths do, the biological psychopaths, what they do is they perpetuate a system of secondary psychopathy in the world, and they sell it to everybody so that they can mix in within societies and within the world so that people don't look at them and go, hey, you're a psychopath. Get the fuck out of here. Right? So they can be a chameleon because they're perpetuating and selling this aspect of psychopathy into what's called secondary psychopathy. And that's where you have like your middle managers of the Jew lords, like your attorneys and your judges and your politicians and your bankers and those that want to collect all of your data, like Zuck the Cuck and, all the rest of them. Those are your middle managers. They might not be full-on biological psychopaths, but trust me, they're working from that secondary psychopathy mindset.
And genetically, they have like a 100 to 400, or I'm sorry, maybe it's 100 times to 400 times more likelihood of being a psychopath. Like the occurrences will happen 400 times more out of every, given metric, whether it's 1 million or 1,000 or whatever. It'll be a high percentage.
Right. And then what they do is they set up situations in which it's impossible for you to be able to become truly wrathful, full of wrath against them, because they do things like put fluoride in the water, which fluoride is the main ingredient in Prozac for a reason. It makes you apathetic. Your problems don't go away. You just no longer care about them.
Sodium fluoride's a highly active neurotoxin.
Yes, exactly. So they are mass poisoning the water supply. On that single fucking reason alone, they should all be executed. And yes, I just said the quiet part out loud.
No, I mean, I believe that's what the law prescribes as a remedy, is execution and trial, right? Always due process, right? For people, and this is where I think we could use a little fascism and just omit certain people from those protections, and that was particularly traitors and seditionists should be waived all of their rights, right, to due process, all of those things.
Well, the second that you cause harm to someone to that level, and what you're doing is purposeful, then if it causes the death of someone, or even if it just causes the theft of something from someone, both of those, under the common law, the penalty of which is death. You used to hang thieves, right? In the Wild West, they'd find a thief or a horse thief, fucking hang them. If you've caught them what was called red-handed, you could just simply execute them.
Man, the good old days,
Well, technically,
no, I mean,
the
really
common
it was.
laws, it was because you could take care of the problem in society.
Well, and that's what happened is when society stopped doing that job, when society stopped taking care of its own problems, communism.
Yeah, and then you have cops that are completely corrupt and they're actually focusing on the system to perpetuate it. So now you have a group of armed thugs. You literally have a standing army, which is exactly what the founding fathers warned us about, was that standing armies are the bane of liberty. I think Sam might have said that, Sam Adams. But anyway, regardless of who said it, it's absolutely true.
Right.
So when you have this entire standing army called militarized police, and their job is literally, they're trained to hide evidence. They're trained to do civil asset forfeiture, which is like, oh, if you got $2,000 in your bill folder, it's in your glove box, they just take it. Okay, bitch, that's a common law theft. I have the right to execute you on the spot for that. And this is why you end up with this situation. Because they're trained by, again, biological psychopaths that perpetuate secondary psychopathy that then end up in situations like this, where you have entire standing armies coming up against you, and saying, give me what's in your wallet, or give me your ID. Where's the contract? Oh, you don't have any contract? Well, then that means I don't know who you are, so I get to throw you in jail. No, you don't. You and I can have a gunfight right here, and we can decide it if you really want to. You want to go down that route. And here's the thing about that. Again, I said the quiet part out loud. If people are not willing to die for their freedom, they don't have it.
Right.
Sorry. It's just what it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's easy to come under scrutiny because of, like it's just a reality in America in the last 20 years or maybe longer, but I've noticed the last 20 years, if you're conservative, if you're right leaning, if you're traditionalist at all, if you're not literally a Bolshevik or a Jew or a Zio Christian, right? Somebody who blindly and faithfully supports Jews to the point of like financial donations and shit like that, then if you're not one of those people, you're basically a Nazi and you're targeted and you're pipelined as a neo-Nazi and just all kinds of other shit. I've learned to lean into it. You know what I mean? Probably maybe not the smartest move in the world, in long term, but like it's I'm just recognizing that it's there. And I realize that like there are people that are even watching this show that these things, they don't even give a shit about them, but they have to write them all down and turn them all into somebody. You know what I mean? That's how this shit works. Like it's we're always going to be pipelined. And so, if it's all because Hitler was right. It's kind of stupid, but they can't let people say that, even though that's a fact and it's true. And because of that, we live in this really strange world where we all just have to act like something's not happening. And it is fucking happening. Just like the genocide in Gaza or, the lack of evidence of the Holocaust or any of the other number of things that we could easily point out that have led to devastating things for our own people, but they don't fucking exist.
Well, the problem with humans in general is that nothing exists for them until it's in their face. Nobody realizes what's going on until it's you that it happens to, right?
Yeah.
So
individually,
it happens to everybody. Like, oh, it doesn't, whatever. And I just put up a few memes. One about the fact that the Spartans understood that if you came against us, if you tried to harm our people, it was Spartan law that if you were a Spartan warrior, you would defend your people to the death without question, as was the law of King Canute and several other of the Norse tribes, that if you threw away your shield, you were barred from sacrifice, assembly, and you were basically ostracized from the entire community. You didn't live with us anymore because you succumbed to fear over love.
Yeah, that's pretty base.
That's why they wouldn't tolerate it. Like, okay, you're going to succumb to something that you have a choice about and forsake your love of your people and your kin for your own well-being. Well, no, that's not how that works. And that's not how any species has ever been able to exist on the planet. You don't see lions being like, oh, look, the hyenas are taking our kill. I guess we'll let them have it. No,
yeah, man, I'm kind of neutral on that. I'm kind of feeling neutral. I kind of align left on this and that, I was sorry, was it a lion eating your baby? Oh, I'm a liberal,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That naivete to the naivete to the point of ignorance, which is like, I like to pronounce that word like that because you're ignoring something. It's a choice. You're ignoring what is the reality of something. Now, if you're nescient, that means you literally do not know. Okay, I have some sympathy for those that are nescient, meaning young ones that are coming up and they might not yet know what's going on and they have not yet learned. Okay, that's fine. But I have no sympathy for anyone who's in their late 20s who still pretends like they're nescient. You're not nescient anymore. You're ignorant. You are making a decision not to look into these things because they upset you. Well, tough shit. You live in a physical world. You live within a society. And so every choice that you make determines the outcome of that society, whether you like it or not.
We talk about National Socialism a lot. Like it's a, Like that was one of the primary duty was like it was up to the health of the nation was up to the nation. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
it's a primary fundamental. In some cases, you have to state it, I suppose, and they did to the world. You know, and you see it happen still a lot. They still do this even in the mainstream media a lot of times when they make like proclamations. But essentially, like you have the right to defend yourself. You have the right, and you see Jews saying this all the time, right? Because they're over blowing up kids in Gaza, right? But yeah, you ultimately a nation has a right to defend itself, and a requirement and duty to, and so there are no neutral parties, right? That's ultimately what you're saying is there is no neutral in this, right? Like if you're not helping, if you're not physically actively working to better the situation, then you're on the other side.
Yes, you are. And since you brought it up, I thought about this the other day because I periodically read through the tenets of National Socialism. Now, I don't have them memorized, but if you do me a favor, because this will connect in everything with everything we've been talking about, pull up on some website, doesn't really matter which one, pull up the tenets of National Socialism. And I think I don't remember the specific number, like which one it was, but Hitler talked about that he demanded that Germany have a German common law and that Germany would not be subject to, and I guess it depends on what translation you read, to say Roman civil law or just shortly Roman law. So if you look at the tenets of National Socialism, that was one of them in there. And the reason why that's so important is because Roman civil law is what has enslaved all of us. It's what the English fought against to keep Rome out of England. It's what the Celts fought against Rome. It's what the Gauls fought against Rome, so that Roman civil law did not enslave them. And I brought up just a simple little introduction that I took a little snippet out of from some treatise, and forgive me which one, I don't remember. But it's the difference between the civil law and the common law. And it's just the introduction of the treatise. It says, there have grown up in history of nations only two great systems of law, the civil law of ancient Rome and the common law of England. All the most civilized nations in the world are governed by either one or of those other two great schemes of justice. Through the civil law and the common law have much in common, yet in many important particulars, they are the opposites of each other. In the course of his studies, the student of law finds so much said in an incidental way about the civil law that it is calculated to mislead his judgment in the regard to the true character of that scheme of justice, which is slavery. That it is important at the onset of his walks over the fields of the common law to give him some account of the civil law and to point out in what it differs essentially from the common law. This is a matter of much importance to every student who aspires to a comprehensive and enlightened knowledge of jurisprudence. Okay, so these two systems of law are completely fucking different. Yes, and a lot of the times,
NSDAP point.
Yeah, a lot of the times they're the opposite of each other, and that's why Hitler said that. That's why the tenets are so important in there, particularly
We demand
one
substitution of a German common law in place of the Roman law serving a materialistic world order.
There it is, right there.
Yep.
There's so much importance in that, in the totality of what he was saying, as to how the rest of the entire planet has been enslaved by Roman civil law and has been enslaved by the lack of knowledge of their own common law. Because the common law is the law of the land. The Roman civil law, also in another way, there's also another form of law called the law merchant, which is basically stems from Roman civil law. And the law merchant is where you get this totality of enslavement, the totality of these very quick courts that are basically private for-profit courts that are only upholding Roman civil law and the law merchant. Basically, contracts. And, So you signed a contract with such and such municipality. The word municipal law is also, a lot of the time, it's analogous to Roman civil law. Some jurists don't like to use the word municipal law, but that's really what it is. It's you being run by some municipality, some corporate governance that you never agreed to. And that, everybody, is a de facto government. That's what defines a de facto government. And okay, so you have de jure and you have de facto. And obviously, clearly, by the tenets of National Socialism that you just read, the Germans and Hitler understood this. So a government de facto is a government of fact, a government actually exercising power and control, as opposed to the true and lawful government. A government not established according to the Constitution of the nation, or not lawfully entitled to recognition or supremacy, but which, nevertheless, supplanted or displaced the government de jure. A government deemed unlawful or deemed wrongful or unjust, which nevertheless receives presently habitual obedience from the bulk of the community. So that's de facto. Means it's factual.
Basically,
it's
legitimate
there.
or not, that's the government. Yeah, that's the one that's there.
Yeah. So a government de facto is one that's there, but it's not legitimate.
Right.
Now, de jure means by right. So you either are living under a de facto government or you're living by right, protected and understanding your own sovereignty, and you're under your society's collective common law, which is custom and usage and the decisions of courts of record, which have to follow according to the course of the common law. You're not wandering into a Roman civil law court. You're not wandering into a law merchant court. You are at law. Well, the only way that you stay at law under the common law is if you get rid of the rest of those contracts. Because if not, you're going to be subject to those contracts and they're going to throw you into those inferior courts. And those inferior courts that you get thrown into are there by your agreement, your consent. As Jefferson said, the just powers of government are derived from the consent of the governed. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what if there's no consent? Well, then there's no fucking just powers. But that's how the Jew has circumvented all of that. Say, okay,
right.
Well, I'll get you by contract. I'll get you by creating all of these little corporations called municipalities, like cities and counties and states and whatever. And they're corporations. The courts are now corporations. They're private for-profit courts. And those courts that you enter into by that contractual agreement, that's called a nisi prius court. It means a court of prior agreement. So again, going back to the user and license agreement bullshit, if you go and read a few user and license agreements, what you'll see pretty much in every one of them is that you'll see that you don't have the right to sue them. You have to go to binding arbitration. Now, yes, there's nothing essentially like wrong or evil about binding arbitration itself. It's perfectly fine. And as a matter of fact, binding arbitration used to be the basis of Roman civil law prior to them creating these codes and things and whatnot and kind of fucking everything up. It used to be based in binding arbitration. So it's a good thing as long as your arbitrator is of good moral character. If they're not, well, you got a problem. But again, so if you read the user and license agreement, they're telling you what court you are able to adjudicate any matter between you and them within. And that's exactly what I've done in a reverse engineering standpoint with the vocational science of freedom status docs. I've said, okay, fuckers, you want to play this game? Get this. I'm going to claim my entire gross estate. I'm going to remove myself from all contracts. I am going to only be under the common law. If you come and you attempt in any way, shape, or form to administer my estate, and again, an estate is everything that a man or woman owns at law, including your body. If you attempt to come and administer my estate, you are entering into a contract with me of which you agree that I'm taking your ass to binding arbitration and that you, for potential fiduciary malfeasance of the administration of my estate, have to put up a $350 million bond. And if you don't put up the bond and you continue to administer my estate, that's what I get to take you before binding arbitration, that amount. And that freaks the fuck out of them. Because if you're out, you have no duty to them, you've given no consent, then it's 100% liability back to you. And now you get to enter into my contract as a performance contract. You don't want to do that? You don't want to put up the bond? Then don't fucking touch me.
Welcome to the contract, nigger.
Exactly. Because I can do this the same way that you did it to me to begin with, except I know what I'm doing. And that terrifies them.
Yeah, that would probably make some people your enemies. You know what I mean? Especially if they were vindictive, Jewish types. If you know what I mean? If they were, Semitic.
Yeah, well, they don't want to touch you with a 10-foot cattle prod, I'll tell you that, because they realize you're now 100% liable. The liability is 100% on them. Where in these private for-profit courts and their corporations and their contracts and the bonds that they put onto the court cases and the bonds that they put onto the birth certificates, all of that is what protects the Jew under what's called limited liability. Okay, how do you take away their capacity to have limited liability? Everything I just said. And if you don't do that, you're going to be stuck under their situation and going to be stuck under their jurisdiction, whether you like it or not. But as we talked about last time, you asked me, you said, why does it seem like they always do follow their own law? Well, this is the reason. It's because they have been eating themselves for thousands of years based upon this same system, and they will never, nor can they ever, change it.
Interesting.
Or else everything that they've ever done would instantaneously come flying apart. And they can't have that. So they're stuck in their own systems, of which, if you learn, you can totally beat the shit out of them because they're not that good at using them. And that's the way out.
I've been saying that same for a while. Yeah, they're definitely not the smartest. Their systems don't work fundamentally. And so you kind of have to. You find yourself in a place where you have to find a way out of that system or into a system that works, come up with something else.
Right, which is what the founding fathers did. They said, okay, the crown and England want to completely suppress us. They want to be able to put redcoats in our houses that we have to feed. And if the redcoat decides to, I don't know, maybe rape your daughter, there isn't much fuck all you can do about it. And they can rummage through all of your belongings. They can check to see and make sure that you have a stamp on everything because of the Stamp Act and all this other absolute old school, full on chain tyranny. Well, you have a few years of that and you have a revolution. Okay. And that didn't work out too well for the Rothschild controlled English because they happened to at the same time also be fighting a few other people. And they didn't have the capacity to bring their quote unquote full might against Americans. So we won by force of arms. Well, we've lost now so many hundreds of years later because what we took by force of arms, they've taken back from us by force of insight.
Yeah, by replacement and supplication.
Yes,
basically.
Yes, by invasion of idiots and using them as weapons against us, and by dumbing down the American people by the perpetuation of the Prussian education system, as I said, and giving an endless amount of distraction and false information, which coupled with the lack or the inability of understanding the trivium, you have no chance to get out. You are completely cucked. Absolutely and totally. Because you're cucked in your mind. You don't have the tools necessary to defeat them. Because you're willfully allowing their tools to completely take you over. And at some point in time, as a wise man once said, you will have to stop running and take a stand. Either you or your children or your grandchildren. Better you than them. And I completely agree with that. The time to act is now, because it's only going to get worse if we don't.
You recently moved to FTJ Media. Has that process been kind to you, or have you had much time to work on it, or are you established there now? I know I think I subscribed, but I don't see you anywhere on the pages. Maybe I don't.
Yeah, I don't. If anybody's listening, hey Dave, if you're listening, I don't know if there's anything different or specific that I have to do to be able to be on the main page. Like, I have my channel up and it's there, and I've been uploading things onto FTJ on a fairly regular basis. I try and do like one a week. And whenever I start a new platform, it's kind of fun because then I get to determine exactly what I post as far as previous classes are concerned. So I can put things more in a logical order so that if people just jump onto a channel, come to the FTJ, start from scratch, and just literally listen to every single class all the way in order, they'll have a good basis of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So yeah, I've been uploading stuff. I don't have too much up right now. We got maybe, so it looks like I only have eight classes up right now. But I put up one of the more current readings that I've been doing, which was a Zero Hedge article about the corporate state and about its creation and how it's organized, and that there are 3 city-states, which would be the Vatican, City of London, and DC, which basically control the world, and how the hell this happened. And they gave like a kind of a beginner's breakdown of the history of it. And so what I did was I took a long period of time and read through the entire article, and then I added information, added other facts, gave people more things to download so they could check it out. And that's one of the things that I have up on FTJ right now. And then the other really important one that I have up on FTJ that I think everybody should watch is How the Republic Was Stolen, the Edward Mandell House, the Jew that basically set up the quote unquote system. And House was basically Woodrow Wilson's handler. The Jews had him totally under control by he had an affair with, I think, one of his students when he was a teacher or professor. Anyway, some Jews found out about it, leveraged him for it, and then basically said, okay, we can make this all go away. And if you agree to do certain things once you became president. And one of those fucking things was sign the Federal Reserve Act. So Wilson was completely controlled from the entire time he was in presidency, even beforehand. And it was this fucker, Edward Mandell House, who controlled him. And I
always wondered who that was. We knew several people that were big Jews at the time that were, operating in DC, but somebody had to have been pulling Wilson's chain, as well as Taft's. We think it was Baruch, Bernard Baruch with Taft, but I never knew that about Wilson. Yeah,
Wilson had one, and his name was Edward Mandell House, and House wrote a book, and it was a veiled, like, egotistical, fictional self-biography of himself, basically. And it was called Philip Drew Administrator. Now, strange as that title sounds, the whole aspect of the administrator part was totally showing what they were going to do to America. And he wrote this book as as like a veiled character of himself about how someone comes into government and then like totally takes it over from behind the scenes, which is exactly what he did. So that book, Philip Drew Administrator, was Edward Mandell House's view in 1913. And then if you fast forward to 1933, where they really took everything, you go and you read the book On Our Way from Roosevelt, and Roosevelt completely tells you what he did in 1933, and he admits that it wasn't constitutional to do. So if you want to know the Jews' playbook, go read the playbook.
This is crazy, but it's exactly the kind of thing that Jews would do. It's kind of funny, no matter which way you come about it, if you're really honest and if you do your due diligence, you come to find out that it's the Jews. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, for a long time,
it's like we're not all Nazis or something. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that an insane thing to say? How anti-Semitic of me.
Not anymore. It's not. I mean, I was literally nescient for a long time regarding the WHO. I didn't really understand the WHO of what the situation was. People referred to, oh, it's the globalists. Oh, it's the Rothschilds. And that's where I kept my focus on for a long time. And then I was like, oh, but wait, hold on. This one mentor of mine, whose name was Tammy, she said, no, it's the attorney. The attorney is the one that always is in the middle of everything. And without the attorney, none of them could do anything that they're doing to us. And I was like,
Those
oh,
are the
okay.
priests, right? The new priests or the attorneys.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they are. They are the new priests of knowledge. They're the priests of your conscience and are going to decide if you've been a bad boy or not and that you get to pay because you were a bad boy. Well, what's that an aspect of? Total, complete world dominance. Well, who's behind that? Oh, it's the Jews. Okay, got it. Right. It took me a minute to get there because I didn't know very much about Jewish history. I didn't know much about the totality of the evil that they perpetuate, particularly when it comes to child sacrifice and all that shit with adrenochrome and oh my God. So another mentor of mine who's now passed on, his name was Steve Carr. He brought me through history and said, hey, wait a second, son, you've got a lot of things that you're missing here and I'll help catch you up. Because this happened in Rome, this happened over here, this happened in England, this happened here, and who's the culprit? Oh, yeah. It's that little nasty, happy merchant rubbing his hands all the time.
Bro,
Got it.
all the books, yeah, were all the books were about Jews and things they did, murdered kids and fucking. There was all throughout history, man. You could almost argue books wouldn't exist if it weren't for the fact that people had to remember Jewish crime. You know, it's kind of crazy, but
It's funny you bring that up because I thought about that for a long time. Like, what are the best ways to really like memorize or even understand the whole three-dimensional aspect of history? And I thought, okay, well, and I started off with that old maxim that countries that have no wars have no history. And I thought, okay, well, yeah, there's military history, got that. Who conquers who? Okay, got that. And then I got into, wait a second, there is a tremendous amount of history and law. And then Tammy taught me, yeah, everything's written. Everything is written in the law. All you have to do is go read it. Oh, okay, cool. So where should I go read? She's like, start reading treatises. I'm like, all right, I can do that. No problem. Read your foundational documents. Okay, cool. Got that. No problem. And then read the foundational documents of the countries, England particularly, of what the law was that has now filtered down to you, but you're never taught them, whether it be, say, the rewriting of Roman law under Justinian, whether it be the Magna Carta from 1215 in England, whether it be what happened in England during William the Conqueror in 1066 and how he fucked everything up and took away the 100 Court and subjugated everybody. It's in the law. It's written. So then when you get to now, you look back and you go, oh, okay, well, where'd all these laws come from? And how'd all these systems come into existence to enslave people? Oh, fuck, it's the Jew. Right. So it's like you still come back to the same conclusion.
ultimately, yes, the same shadowy figure. You know what I mean? Behind the curtain.
Yep. You just have to figure out. You just have to see the systems of what they are, or else you're blinded by the sheer, I dare say, brilliance and evil of what you're facing. It's just like too much because once you start to open the curtain, there's so much shit that hits you in the face that's where a lot of people like start to pull back the curtain a little bit and like they start to close it a little bit. Like, oh God, I don't think I want to see that, which is understandable. I totally get that. But once you started to open it or somebody blindly shines the light in your full face of jewelry, then after that, you have a duty to yourself and to humanity to go understand what the fuck has happened. Because if you don't, again, then you're in that ignorant situation and you're doing yourself a disservice.
You're
and
serving
failing.
the enemy.
Yeah, you're literally serving the enemy. Yeah. 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 As we talked about before. Yeah. Those that are fence sitters, you can't be agnostic with good and evil. You could be agnostic towards certain gods or certain religions. Okay, fine, whatever. But you cannot be agnostic to good and evil because you know that good and evil exist. It's not a question.
Certainly know that evil exists.
Yes, and goodness does too. What we're doing here is for the goodness of all humanity.
I mean, we do hope so, and I do make light of it, but that really is all that it takes, though, is when these things do become normalized, when doing the good thing or the thing that benefits your people that leads away from their enslavement and towards their liberation, when those are second nature, you know, and all people are following these examples because they're the right examples to follow and they yield good fruits and it makes for a better society and eventually kicks everyone the fuck out of our country, then it will prove out in the end, right? Like the end will justify the means, but the means aren't they're not anything immoral or illegal. It's really just a matter, like you said, of understanding the law and operating within common law.
Yes, exactly. Oh, by the way, I finally found it. Remember the quote I was trying to remember when we were talking earlier and I couldn't remember what it was? Okay. It was Dante. Dante said, "The darkest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis."
Yeah, that's pretty based. That's pretty based. Thanks, Dante.
Yeah,
The
and then the
darkest
reason that,
places in hell,
yeah, the
indeed.
darkest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis, because you understand what is good and what is not. You understand natural law. Everybody does. Even a child, like Michael Badnarik, one of my greatest mentors, he used to say, okay, what do children do? They pick up something and they say, oh, that's mine. Mine. Right? They understand property. They understand that's mine. So when you take it away from the child, they know that's a harm and they start crying. Like, why did you do that? You didn't have a right to do that. That's mine. Well, fuck yeah. And everybody else should make it more of a point in their adult life to realize that's mine. You don't touch that. And instead of throwing a shit fit about it, shoot them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, we got to get back to the system of law that enables that and supports it. Like it should actually be rewarded. Like you should be able to get bounties on motherfuckers. You know what I mean, from the government. Like, so if you're unemployed, you just go, hey, go find us this motherfucker and bring him back to jail here, and you will give you a tax break or whatever. You know, maybe a zero interest government loan. Eh?
Well, yeah, that's how law used to work. There would be a people that would get together in a court of record. They'd say, "Yep, I witnessed that. Yep, I witnessed it too." And yes, okay. And then where is he? Well, he's not going to come to justice by himself. So what happened? You'd have a bounty on them. And sometimes, if it was anything regarding a theft, the bounty would be dead or alive. And then you had bounty hunters that would go out and clean up the rest of society for you because they made money by it, because you were getting rid of an evil in society, which is a good thing. But the reason why people don't understand what the good and evil is of the world is because A, they trust the government, and B, they have things like the CIA with directors that say, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Okay, if that's your premise, if that's where you're starting, you are fucking evil.
I always thought that was Brzezinski, but that was who was that again?
I'll pull it back up. As William Casey. Yeah. From the first staff meeting in 1981. So yeah, if all of it's untrue, you can't believe anything because it's, well, if what they're all perpetuating is false and they want you to believe a falsehood, then you are in a situation where you're going to probably fear the truth. And as Alexander the Great said, though every generation of the human race, there's been a constant war, a war with fear. Those who have the courage to conquer it are made free, and those who are conquered by it are made to suffer until they have the courage to defeat it, or death takes them. That's that thing that I said, between fear and love.
Shouts to Night Nation Review. Night Nation Review just gave us a donation, dude. He said, Hail Flood and VSOF. Have you been on NNR yet? You got to get on the NNR show. This is, I mean, you're the kind of guest that I think we're going to have quite a few times, but because there are so many different things that you know about and can cover. But generally speaking, like, it's the ultimate idea is that people have to actually take action toward becoming free now, because there's a lot of red tape involved, right? But it is possible and it can be done, but it's an applied science. It's a learned understanding. It's a set of values and principles and understanding of a different system of law, really, than what's commonly acknowledged in the municipalities. But ultimately, it's something that's applied. It's a vocation. That's why you call yourself vocational science of freedom, because it's a thing. It has to be undertaken and actions have to be done, and follow through and due diligence is all required. But and there is a lot, right? But you can do tremendous things such as I saw you talking about land and title. I think a couple of weeks ago, maybe at an NNR episode in chat, and people don't know about titles.
That was really difficult to try and do in chat. Luckily, I can type pretty quickly, and so I could answer his question more or less in real time. There was a bit of a lag there, but I tried to explain that on Night Nation about the understanding of what the Torrens registry system is, registration, and this again gets back to registration, where the Torrens registry system came from, why it's completely unlawful, and that you have to understand that knowledge and be able to get your property off the tax rolls by a particular way. And yeah, Knight said he'd have me on. We just haven't figured out the logistics and the time yet. But yeah, I'm happy to go on.
That's an example, right? That's an example of the kind of things that you can learn and the actual law involved, and a situation where, like in that registry, all land has been added to a registry. None of it was added by court order, and the law applies only to land that's been, ordered to be on the registry.
Hey, that's good, man. You remembered that. That's exactly it.
It's one example of a technicality that actually they're just essentially bluffing people on. And
Yes.
if you simply go make the claim of the facts, then you are capable of establishing or in this case getting yourself unregistered from the tax roll or the registration that puts you under those laws.
Right, because you go to the original act and you say, hey, this is what your Jew law says, and it doesn't apply to me because this thing was never put in there under a court order. And so, okay, well, but now, again, remember what I said much earlier about every single time that I come up with remedy and find it, the Jew changes something or the attorney changes something. Okay, what I've heard recently coming down the pipe is that supposedly they're going to do away with the Torrens registry system. Well, I've got a real fucking problem with that, because what that means is that the Jews have been running the registry system for a long period of time. Everybody's registered their land, but then if they end the system, no one will know how to go back and reverse what had been done within the system, right? They'll say, oh, well, we got that now. We've got your ass. And then they just ghost the record. That's a problem, because that's exactly what they did with the original land records when you used to have to go and get things that were called, they weren't called transcripts. They were called, it was an entire record of what has happened within your land or on your land.
Like a title search or something like that.
It is a title search, but there's a name for the totality of the documents that come to you when you do one. It's not called a transcript. It's called abstract. That's what it's called. So when they started the Torrens registry system, it took a couple decades, but then all of a sudden, no one could get like an abstract of their land record anymore. And even if you went to someone who was specialized in looking up land records, they'd come back to you and say, they don't give out those documents anymore. You can't get one. You can't get a land abstract anymore. And I said, what? That's the whole record of who has changed, indeed, the land title from 1 to 1 to 1 to 1, because it starts with the original land patent. The original land patents are all signed by the fucking president of the United States, if you didn't know that. Why? Because the president of the United States, the president of this trust, who is holding these lands in trust for you, the sovereign, had to sign a document, which I consider the original land patents to literally be treaties. They're a treaty between the trust and the sovereign to say, this is now yours, and you have the right to keep it forever. Because there's a clause in all of the original land patents, and it's called the addendum clause. It states, to his heirs and assigns forever. Okay, forever is forever. That doesn't mean I have to register it. That doesn't mean you get to take it back from me. It doesn't mean that some municipality gets to create a corporation and say, oh, well, you're getting water from us, so now you get to have your land taxed. No, bitch. It says forever.
Right. And so it's the foundational document, or the establishes.
Yes, and you have to stand
ownership.
upon that. You have to stand upon that clause. You have to stand upon the addendum clause. You have to stand upon the forever aspect of that original land patent. And then again, obviously, remove it from the Torrens registry system and remove yourself from the contracts that make you into the presumption of being either A, an infant, B, dead to the law, where they consider you dead because you haven't shown up for 7 years to claim your estate, which goes all the way back to the Sestri-K-Vi Act of 1666, where they burned London to the ground. And then they said, well, if you don't come back and claim your estate, well, then the crown gets to administer it. Well, it's funny how that exact fucking same thing happened in Rome when Nero burned Rome to the ground. And then they came along with the 12 tables and said, well, if you don't come forward, Caesar gets to administer your estate. Oh, really? How the fuck does that work?
It's just consent by non-compliance, right? By non-compliance.
Well, yeah, and that's an aspect of law. What you do not object to, you agree to.
Yeah, exactly. They use that a lot.
Oh, it's
another
all the
contract.
Time. Yeah, it's in a sense how they perpetuate the presumptions. Because if you don't rebut a presumption, a presumption stays in full force and effect during the totality of whatever the court case is or whatever the situation is. In fact, there's even a Iowa code for it, and I think I found it in federal rules too at one point. But anyway, it's under the Iowa code 554.1206. So it's 554.1206. And anybody can go look this up. And what it says is that the trier of the fact, now we're talking about courts here, the trier of the fact is under the presumption until evidence is produced that supports its evidence of its non-existence. Now that is a lot of Jew fuckery for basically saying once we have a presumption over you, it's going to stay there until you rebut it with evidence of its non-existence. Okay, but you're not even telling me what the presumptions are. And then you're sure as fuck not going to go and bother to tell me how to produce evidence that gets rid of its non-existence. That's never going to happen.
Right. Where's my existence establishment format? Please give me my fucking, my establishment of existence documents.
Well, it goes to, the thing about that is that it goes to the right to know the nature and cause of the accusations against you, which is a constitutionally based protected right under the Bill of Rights. So if you're never given the nature and cause of the thing that they're attacking you for, you can never defend against it because it's fucking impossible. You don't even know what they're doing. Right? And then, straight out of Swampton put up the U.S. code. We covered that last time, the person aspect, that everything under the U.S. code from the standpoint of the use of person, it means an infant. So what are they doing in U.S. code? They're just administering abandoned infant estates, people.
Yeah, and y'all nigga abandon y'all estate, man, because you're infants. But I know this sounds crazy. That's why we make the joke and the meme about it, though. But they've dehumanized and depersonalized and taken away your agency through use of this language, which is lawful language, right? And so this is this is not just legalese, but they use this to suppress you, to administer your estate on your behalf as well.
Yes, and everything that you agree to by consent, even if you don't have the cognitive ability to fully comprehend what they're doing, they don't give a shit, because all they care about is, do you understand it? And understand, if you go and look up the definition of understand in particularly like an Old Black's or Bouvier's, to understand something is to agree to a contractual nature. Basically, I'm kind of paraphrasing. But the point is that, like, you wander into court and the judge says, okay, it looks like you've picked up a couple charges here, this, that, and the next thing. I'm going to read these to you. And then he'll say, do you understand the charges against you? If you say yes, you are agreeing not only to the Nisi Prius
to be
court,
charged. Yeah,
but you're agreeing to the statutes that you're agreeing that they have validity over you.
Yeah,
and even if they didn't,
submission.
Even if they didn't, the second that you do say yes, I understand, that's it. That's the contract right there in court. You just verbally agreed to the contract, even if you didn't agree to the contract in any other way, shape, or form prior to that. Doesn't matter. You just agreed to it right there.
Yep.
Yeah, so in determining the meaning of any act of Congress or of any ruling or interpretation of the various administrative bureaus or agencies of the United States, the words person, human being, child, and individual shall include every infant member of the species Homo sapien who was born alive at any stage of development. Now, people say, well, they're just naming things off, right? Well, no. The thing you have to understand about the word includes regarding statutory construction, code construction, and literally a maxim of law is that the inclusion of one is the exclusion of all others. And that's a profound thing to understand about how to read code and how to read statutes. So if you say, you write down a statute that says trees include oaks and elms, right? Say you wrote a statute that said that. Okay. That means a pine tree is not a tree under the statute. So it's a way of the Jews' capacity to use language to confuse you and not be able to read what you're reading.
Yeah, it's like imposing limitations on what would naturally make sense, common sense, I suppose. It's you can't use common sense in this.
No, you can't use Oxford English because everybody speaks 3 languages, whether they know it or not. You speak formal English, your Oxford English, that's where you're writing your papers and doing business and so on and so forth. Then you have slang, which is different for different places, even for all cultures that supposedly speak the English language. So like in England, a cigarette's called a fag, right? Or here, if you do something that's really amazing, they say that's cool, right? Or if you're doing something really amazing for a long period of time, you say, man, you're hot, right? None of this makes any sense in the English language, but it does in slang.
Yes.
And then the third language that everybody speaks, whether they know it or not, even if they speak it incorrectly, is legalese. And legalese is a locked down language through court decisions. The fucking shit I shouldn't say never changes, but it takes hundreds and hundreds of years to change the definition of a word in law regarding how it's been determined. Now, statutes, acts, and ordinances and codes, they can determine what they want the definition of something to be within the statute, act, ordinance, or code by simply defining it as we just read.
Yeah, we've seen that lots of times in codes and bills. Yep.
So if you go in
make a definition.
Yep. So if you go into court thinking that you know what something means, well, that's not going to mean that in that particular situation if you haven't gone and read what the statute says, because it's the statute that controls the definition.
This is why understanding is binding, right? Because you're standing under the
Yes, indeed. That's exactly what it is.
Presupposed rules and definitions and conditions. Yep.
That's exactly what it is. And again, so they can get the contractual part of it. Oh, there was something else. Something I was going to go over. Now
we're not in any hurries. I'm not in any hurry if you're not. I mean, we're
no, I'm not in any hurry.
Good.
So I wanted to show everybody. I don't know if I can probably blow this up a bit more. It's probably on a fairly good resolution, so I can literally make it like the size of my screen or close to. Actually, that might be too big. Okay, I'm just going to put it to where it should be readable. Okay, so I wanted to get into the history of where this whole administration of infants came from and why we're in the situation we're in. Okay. So back in England, very long time ago, from basically the mid 1500s up until about the late 1600s, they had this thing called the Court of Wards and Liveries. And in the Court of Wards and Liveries, what you had to do if you were a ward of somebody else, and pretty much everybody was back then, you were either like a ward to, say, an instructor, you were a ward to say a tailor or a blacksmith, or you were a ward to, say, a member of the peerage, right? A duke, a baron, maybe even the king, who knows?
Right.
Okay, so wardship was normal thing. Wasn't anything evil about it. It wasn't even any evil intention about it. It was about that you were being taught how to manage your own affairs, whatever your affairs were, okay, by your master. Okay, fine. So in the Court of Wards and Liveries, what someone had to do was they had to come before this court and what was called sue out their livery. So you were suing out the livery, which is where we get the word delivery from. So to deliver, to have and to hold, basically. So you had to go and sue your guardian for what? For your fucking estate. And if you didn't do this, it was shown that you had not yet come of age. But it was England's way and the law's way, and the common law's way, of having a literal coming of age ceremony by you suing your guardian, that you could handle yourself in court, you could take care of your own matters, and you had to do it on your own volition, right? So in that aspect of suing out your livery, you had to do what was called a proof of age inquisition to prove that you've come of full age. Okay, so now come of full age is a term that goes all the way back to the Magna Carta. If you want to look it up, it's in Article 3, 4, and 5, the importance of what I'm talking about. And because, to give a little history about the Magna Carta and the barons were sick and tired of the Serpent Seed line, which would have been William the Conqueror and everybody up to King John, which was the one that was forced to sign the Magna Carta. They were sick and tired of them administering lands that had long been in their sanguinity for sometimes hundreds of years. And this fuck comes along and screws all that up. And they're like, okay, enough of this shit. So they put into the Magna Carta specifically stating that when one came of full age, he will have his estate without fine and without fee. Meaning you can't fine or fee me for the use of my own property once I've claimed it. So the barons put that in the Magna Carta because they were so sick and tired of the bullshit that had been perpetuated by this idiot, that they put it into the Articles 3, 4, and 5 of the Magna Carta. Okay, so now fast forward quite a bit from 1215 all the way up to like 1540, I think was the establishment of the Court of Wards and Liveries. But anyway, so now you have to prove your age, that you've come of full age. And this is where they did it, in the Court of Wards and Liveries. So a proof of age hearing. The purpose of a proof of age inquest or inquisition was to establish the date of birth and thence the age of a feudal tenant-in-chief, meaning, again, the barons had these lands in their possession for a very, very long time. Technically, the king owns all of the land in England, but this is part and parcel of the feudal system, okay?
This is their system, yep.
Yeah. So often, as part of the overall Inquisition post-mortem legal process, which would establish whether he should be taken into ward, a supplement to an inheritance had to apply the escheat or the escheator of his county of birth. Now, to escheat to something or to be an escheator is to have this perpetuation of what comes after you. The states in America still do this when it comes to, say somebody dies that has land and they have absolutely no heirs whatsoever, okay? So that land is then said to escheat back to the state. And then what the state is supposed to do is that they're supposed to put it up for auction so it goes back to we the people, right? Because the state can't sit there and own land. So,
Okay.
But the land temporarily escheats to someone else for a certain period of time until it can go to where it's supposed to go. So that's basically what an escheat means. Okay. So the escheator of his birth, county of birth, to prove his age, that is that he had reached the age of majority. Now that's technically, now we're reading from Wikipedia. Okay. Now you never want to take even though I'm reading from it, I'm going to put this as a caveat. Never fucking use Wikipedia for your absolute understanding of the law. It will never be correct. And what I'm about to bring up is the point that it's not correct. So it says that he had reached the age of majority. Incorrect. It says that he had come of full age. The term age of majority is used by the attorney to say when someone can join the democracy and basically have his shit administered for him because he's reached the age of 18 or 21, whatever the age of majority is, okay?
Where they can then ascribe those funds to themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the age of majority and the term come of full age are two entirely different fucking things. So I don't want anybody to be confused about that. Okay, so anyway, to do this, he or someone on his behalf submitted a writ este probena, which is literally where we get the word probate from, into chancery. This effectively said, it is about time. He would usually have his hearing or inquisition relatively promptly, possibly less than 2 months later. If there was no doubt in the matter, the escheator would generally accept the claim. If he doubted his eyes, the escheator might ask for certification as proof. Okay, so la. So what are they doing? They're proving that the heir had come of full age and that he could handle his own affairs. That was done in what was called the Court of Wards and Liveries. Okay, fine and dandy. Wonderful. Problem is that now that they restarted their system in America of their feudal control, there's no remedy. There's no court like this. Nor is there any place in the law, in the Roman civil law, that says this is what you now have to do to come and have your estate. Okay, that's a problem. Because there's no remedy there. So what I had to do was I had to learn all this and then say, okay, wait a second, motherfuckers. If there's no remedy, how did they take care of it back then? And then I looked into the Court of Wards and Liveries, and I looked into what a proof of age inquest was, and I looked into how they did it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's how they did it. So what did I do? I just reversed engineered it and said, okay, what would we have to do that? Well, back then they had what was called a judicial coroner. And a coroner is not, in the old way, a coroner is not what people think it is. Like, oh, they deal with dead people. No, the definition of coroner literally means the protector of the king's property. So from that standpoint, you'd have a judicial coroner inquest because the property was being administered by the king until, or the master, or whoever you were a ward to, let's put it that way. And then you would have to sue out your livery, and then take it back. Well, there's no court here. So I said, okay, how'd they do it? Well, they did a proof of age inquest. And I said, well, what are the other presumptions that they use against us? Oh, they presume us dead. Okay, so I got to do a proof of life inquest. Okay, cool. Wrote that out. And so what we do is we gather 12 people, 12 other members of the peerage. You assign a judicial coroner to your court. Now, we just make sure that it's somebody that has a medical license. It doesn't really matter who it is. It could be a chiropractor, could be a RN, could be a doctor, could be a dentist. I don't care. And then we say, okay, judicial coroner, this is the evidence put forward to prove that this man has come of full age and he's been found to be living. And then does the jury concur? Yes, it does. And here's the evidence. Okay, he's got a pulse. Okay, he was born on such and such day. Okay, these people know him to be of good moral character. Okay, he's come of full age. He can handle his own affairs. Great. Wonderful. So then, because it says in the Magna Carta that matters of life and limb shall be considered gratis and cannot be denied, because some people ask me, well, what gives you the authority to do this? The common law gives me the authority to do this from the Magna Carta. Because again, is the total aspect and control of my own estate, literally the ownership of my own body, would that not be considered to be a matter of life and limb? And the answer is yes, obviously.
Yeah, definitively. Yeah.
Without question. Because if you're not, you're a slave. Okay, well, that's a problem. So I had to reverse engineer it. We do what we do, and then we file these things onto the public record, and then we get a certified copy of that, and then we start serving people. We start process serving various different government agencies. We start process serving courts. We process serve, well, take for example the case of the gentleman in Colorado. He process served a sheriff. It said, this is who I am. This is what I've proved to be. I don't need your administration, and do not contact me nor try to administer anything of mine without my lawful, signed, and sealed consent. And the sheriff was like, okay. And that was basically it. And they haven't touched him since. And he'll go flying past, well, not flying is like unreasonably, but he'll speed past them and they don't pull him over because they know, in fact, they even wave to him because they know who he is.
Right. And they know it's like, that's Bob, don't fuck with him. This would be some bullshit. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to end up in court. You're going to take lunchtime. Yep.
Because he knows who he is. They can respect that. And that was what this whole proof of life and proof of age inquest, well, particularly the proof of age inquest. I do a proof of life inquest as well. Because the other thing, the other presumption that the Jew attorney uses against you is the presumption of incompetency. And so how do they use that? Well, they use this pseudoscience called psychology to say that, oh, a psychologist has deemed him crazy, right? Which is what they did to Ezra Pound, right? When he started talking about the Jews too much. They're like, throw him in the loony bin. Like, you got to shut him up. Throw him in there. Get the straitjacket on him. Throw him in there. Shut him up.
They did that shit to Ye.
Yeah. And then other gentlemen too as well, because if they lose everything else, if they don't have jurisdiction, they don't have any other, what they do is they'll call you crazy. And what they do in court, they'll say, oh, it's called a fitness hearing. You'll hear the district attorney, if you ever hear the district attorney say this, fucking object immediately and say, grounds, Your Honor. The district attorney will say, well, Your Honor, the state moves for a fitness hearing. Objection, Your Honor. Where's the grounds and where's the standing? Clearly, I have proven myself before this court to fully be able to handle my own affairs, Your Honor. That means I am not incompetent, and that means I am not crazy.
Yeah, and Grounds, nigger.
Yeah, Grounds.
Remember
exactly.
Daryl Grounds? Hell yeah.
Because if you don't have anything, then what are you doing? You're enslaving somebody into a mental ward without their consent. And why? Oh, to preserve the illegality of your own private for-profit court system? No, fuck you. We're not playing that game. I mean, when it comes to that kind of level of slavery where they're possibly going to start to shoot drugs in you, I would literally rather die right there in the courtroom than have that happen. Sorry, but that's the line that you don't cross with me. Fuck you. There's no way you're going to turn me into a fucking mindless zombie. Not happening. I would rather die right here, right now, than ever risk that. But that's what they do.
You know,
So
it's
that
crazy,
never-
but that is what they do. Yeah, you wouldn't think that that's people would sound. It sounds like the rhetoric is extreme, but it's really characteristic. It's under characteristic actually of what they do.
Right, but it's characteristic of the white race.
Yes.
Celts,
Yes.
Druids, Visigoths, Gauls, all of it, right? Even the poor Spanish when they got raided by fucking Muslims. I mean, they fought like hell until the Jews fucking opened the gates and shit, right? So
Yes.
we fight to the death for our freedom and for our kin. That's what we do. If you don't like that, stay the fuck away from me. Because that's the
I don't
line
know.
in the sand.
Did I ask you last show, like if you could get people to just learn 5 quick things? You know what I mean? I mean, you can get as deep into them as you want to, but
Oh, that's a
like
good
if you could just
question.
pass off 5 things to somebody, you know, and they just believe it, you know, what 5 things would you tell them?
Well, I would say the 5 things that I would first teach someone is to take the time to learn the 7 liberal arts. Take the time to learn grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and then the quadrivium. That's 1. 2, I would say if you wish to begin to learn what truly has happened in history, pay attention to the law and pay attention to what happened before and after. Pay attention to cause and effect in the law and in the history of nations. You'll have a much deeper understanding of everything that's going on and the law because it'll force you to look into those things. And if you don't know where to start, again, just watch the timeline class and start from there. 3rd, I would say that the single most important thing that everybody needs to understand first is that you are sovereign. You do not owe anybody anything in this world. What you do as far as mixing your labor with the world is how property is created. You take your labor, you mix it with the world, you take a stick off of a tree, you make it into a sharp, pointy spear, you go and you kill a deer, you skin the deer, you make a coat with it, you eat the deer, or you sell the meat. That's property. That's how you acquire property, through one's will. And nobody else's will can be above yours in regards to your property. So that's 3. 4, I would say that what I said earlier, the greatest understanding when you come to any crossroads in any of this or in your life is, am I following fear or am I following love? And self-love is fine as long as it's, your self-preservation, not egotistical love. Like, I love myself so much, I have to have everything. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
That
Not
basic
Jew love.
not Jew love. That basic understanding between what follows natural law and is morally correct, right? That's 4. And then 5, I would say, whatever you do, put in so much effort and put in so much volume that no one can ever tell you that you're wrong.
That's a pretty good number 5. That's a pretty good number 5 because it's really about the work, and you've got a lot of work done, several years into this understanding. And I think that a lot of people they don't really want to learn because they would become aware of things that they don't know now, and which are plentiful in many, right? Things that actually are suppressing or objectifying or dehumanizing or belittling them or presuming that their incompetence. It's just crazy that they got all this set up and they use every lever, every button, every switch against us in our disfavor.
Yeah, it's because the levers are not any longer being properly used by ourselves. And Sam Adams said, "If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude than the animated contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen."
Sorry, I remembered that was a cold. That's a cold quote. That's where the equality really came from. Is equality between white men, and
Yes.
this was the establishment of like due process for equals, but equality wasn't universal. In fact, that was silly, and that's exactly the kind of shit they were trying to govern away from.
Right. And
But
it doesn't take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men.
what if that's not the truth?
Yeah, that's what Michael Badnark used to say to me. He's like, "I'm just trying to start brush fires everywhere. Don't mind me."
This is what it takes, man, and it's cool that that's what you do and that you offer it to other people. And I hope that you get a lot more attention and a lot more success in this whole vocational school, right? Because it's really what it is. And success for you means success for all the people that understand this stuff. And I haven't even started looking at these videos, but I have a feeling that this is a pretty deep rabbit hole. It's the kind of thing that can take over your life for a while. You know what I mean? So it's like it's kind of a commitment to even look at it, because it is kind of a having to face and accept all of the ways that you're willfully duped out of your power and your consent and your authority and your agency. Like that's all given away. They don't steal it from you. It's volunteered in so many ways. And the more that we understand that, the more we can break those contracts, and we can break the spell, right, that they're casting on all of us. It's sinister. It's very rude socially. It's rude, and there should be a reckoning for that rudeness. And there will be historically, right? There always has been.
Yeah, there always has been. You can't
Yeah.
continue to suppress, oppress an entire group of people, particularly white people, and not expect a serious reaction. And that's what everybody's feeling right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately, but that's just history for you. And yeah, the way forward is to begin. The Buddhists have a saying. They say the journey of 10,000 miles starts with a single step. Okay, start stepping. I don't care if it's goose stepping or how you step, but get stepping. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're the movement, you got to move.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it was Goethe that said, "None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe that they are free."
That's basically, that's what they did, right? Like you said, they changed the nature of the slavery, where you didn't have to be owned and you didn't have to be on the plantation anymore. They know where you are. They know what you're doing, and they'll they'll use all the tools at their disposal to keep you where they want you, or to make sure that you're not ever a problem or inconvenience or obstacle to them. And the entire law system, what we think is the people there to protect us are there to protect them from us.
Yes,
Basically,
it went from physical slavery to wage slavery. So
yes.
instead of being physically bound in chains, the bankers and the Jews thought, well, how do we get people to basically be their own slaves? Oh, I know. We'll give them a wage, just enough so that they work in these absolutely shitty conditions. And then in working in those absolutely shitty conditions, they don't have the time to think their way out of the situation of which we put them into, because they don't have time to study or time to read a book when they're sitting there creating widgets for us. and we'll give them just enough so that they don't realize that they're slaves. That's wage slavery. Instead of, in the colonial days, what people did is they would work for someone for a very short period of time, and they would build up a nest egg or something, some stock in their own ability, and they'd learn a trade, they'd build a little bit of wealth, and then they'd go on to stake their own claim in society. They'd start their own business. They'd create their own whatever. And that was the ability to write your own life script. If you are following some script from a society of those that rule the society, they hate you. They want nothing good for you. Are you going to allow them to write your life script for you? That's pretty short-sighted. You need to write your own life script, whatever that may be. And I don't give a shit if you're 20 or if you're 50. If you wake up tomorrow and you're like, I've had enough of this. Okay, then action is the remedy. It's totally the remedy to to boredom, to self-destruction, to vanity. It's the remedy. Action is the remedy. So start. Take that first step. Get to stepping. And if you want to join the Vocational Science of Freedom from the classes that I hold every Saturday, 1 hour, usually, sometimes it goes 2 hours, depending on the subject, you can join us and then get connected with us on Mega. Because as I showed you, Flood, Mega is a pretty cool program. And we hold classes on there. And then we have a Revolt server. And I don't mean Revolt as in like we're all on Revolt, even though we are. It's literally a program called Revolt. If you want to join the VSOF, you just go to vocationalscienceoffreedom.org and click on the welcome package. And in the welcome package, you can simply download it and it'll teach you how to set up your free Mega account, how to set up your free Revolt account. It's completely free. There's no obligation to anyone to have to do anything when they get there. You can just be a fly on the wall. You can just lurk as much as you want, learn as much as you want, or you can ask as many questions as you want. Totally up to you. Completely free. So you just download the welcome package, fill it out, and then email it back to me at vsof@protonmail.com. And that will get you started with Vocational Science Freedom.
And then they can expect to get vetted. You can dox them later, right?
Well, they get vetted, that's for sure. But everybody's anonymous on the VSOF.
That's good.
I don't have a system, because I've heard some white nationalists have like systems like, oh, we always make sure we know who everybody is and that we have to go through their whole records and know their whole fucking lives. Fuck all that. The problem with that is that the second that you have some sort of central database, some glow nigger is going to come along and take it. Right? Well, that's stupid. The only thing I have that I have a group of is I have an emailing list, which again are all anonymous unless somebody actually wants to put their real name down. So I just know you by your screen name. And that's fine. I don't need to know who you are. Now, if you want to do your Vocational Science Freedom status doc set, then yes, you do send me some private information. But the second I'm done with doing your doc set, I delete the private information off my computer because I don't want it on my computer. For the same fucking reason.
That's documentation, right? Like, do you get like a diploma or degree or something?
No, what I'm talking about, the Vocational Science Freedom status doc set is filling out the documents that rebut all these presumptions, that do the proof of life and proof of age inquest, that create your executor appointment, that
so you're breaking the contracts,
properly claim your birth certificate and your state, and then put up that contract, that performance contract that I spoke about that said, hey, look, after I'm done with this, if you want to continue to administer my estate, this is what you got to do now. You got to put up the bond. And if you fuck around, you're going to find out. And there have been people that have taken judges to binding arbitration and have won.
And that's incredible.
Yeah, because I'm just doing the same thing that they've been doing to us for a very long period of time. It's that no one reversed engineered it. And they never gave us remedy from all that long time ago when there used to be a court of wards and liveries to actually be able to get this done. And if you want to learn about what the status doc process is, you can go to the playlists on either Odyssey, Rumble, or I'm still on YouTube, amazingly, even though I neuter everything that I post on YouTube, but it's still there. Go to the status correction classes. You just go to VSOF status correction classes, and they're you'll find them in the different places in the playlists. But the classes that are in here will teach you everything about what is done with the vocational science freedom status doc set. First, I start you off with understanding your sovereignty. Then I teach you about how your estates are stolen by fraud at birth. Then I go through the status doc classes. Then I show you, okay, what to do after status correction. And then the status overview, how to rebut the presumptions, the difference between state citizenship and being a citizen of the United States. That's ex parte nulls and other various different court cases that I covered in that class. And what the status terms are, like what you want to be in the world, not what you don't want to be, because you can't prove a negative. So people always say, well, I'm not a citizen of the United States. Okay, great. I'm not a pink elephant. Fucking difference does that make? You have to state what you are,
Right.
not what you're not. So you state, I'm one of the people of the several states of the American Union, or I am a Wisconsinite, or I am a Michiganian, or I am a Texan, right? That's how you state your proper standing.
Yep.
I'm one of the people of Texas. I'm one of the people of California, right? That then says, yes, I'm sovereign. Stating that you're not, a green frog doesn't mean anything.
You've put a lot of work into this. These videos are hour, 2 hours long. They're not too long, right? This is not like watching Europa, but it is. There is an order, or there is at least kind of a, there are levels that you probably want to absorb some of this stuff, and you seem to have thought all this out, which is incredible. But this is a lot of content to create, and as a content creator, it's really nice to see. I often lament that there's not very many people that are making useful content that that's gonna like outlast them. You know what I mean? Other than just like popular stuff that's good in the moment, that's popular. But.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up. When I decided to start doing this, I said first and foremost, I wish to create media. I wish to create classes that somebody can watch 20 years from now, and it's still correct, it's still pertinent, and it's still important. I never wanted to chase news. I never wanted to chase current events. I never wanted to be, because there's a million of those people out there. Even if it agrees with what I feel, I don't give a fuck.
It's the only way I do it. Yeah. So
it doesn't matter, right? It's totally pointless. I'll come to my own conclusions about what current events are. And I can guarantee you, based upon the idiocy that I've seen out here of people doing news, it's going to be far beyond what they understand of what's happening. So I said, I want to create things that are timeless. So then I said, well, how do I go about doing that in a way that it's organized and that it actually helps people? And that was where I literally woke up in the middle of the night and saw the symbol, the vocational science of freedom symbol in my mind. I reached over, I grabbed a pen and a piece of paper in the total dark, and I just scratched it in the absolute darkness because I realized what it was, and then I could go back to sleep. Because I thought, oh, there it is. Everything starts with sovereignty, but yet there are these things around sovereignty that are required to keep it. And that really gets to the definition of what a slave is. Because if you look up the word free or you look up the word freedom, it doesn't really give a good definition. It's like, the tendency to be free or whatever. But if you look up the definition of a slave, it defines a slave as someone who is dependent upon something. And that really hit me. I was like, how many different ways am I dependent? And I started counting the ways, and there were far too many of them. And I said, this isn't going to work. And I got to teach other people why this won't work and understand that there was a point in time in American history where it was never like this. And this is not what this country was meant to be. And there's a better way. And so then one thing led to another, and I found mentors, and I started doing classes, and I started teaching probably about 15 years ago, but the internet really wasn't what it was back then. And I don't even think YouTube was really like going strong back then. So I had capability of people to find my information, but it was very limited, and they could basically email me and come to a live class, or I'd go to other classes and meet people. And it was very word of mouth type situation. Well,
Right.
Now it's much different, because now I've been doing online classes for about 5 years now, but I got serious, like really serious about it about 4 years ago. I said, okay, I'm going to create platforms. I'm going to figure this all out. I have to bite the bullet and do the thing, take the steps, figure out how to create a class, figure out how to run OBS, figure out how to set up a microphone, figure out how do you create lesson plans that people will actually be willing to look at and get something from. And luckily, my mother was a teacher, so I kind of got a lot of that teaching capacity and ability from her. And then my father
You
was
could just deep fake Emma Watson. That works pretty good.
Yeah, you can do that too. That works too. Yeah. And I haven't gotten around to being able to, that's kind of why I keep bugging you about, hey, teach me how to do this, Flood, because I really want to be able to do audiobooks, but I don't want to take the time to have to read all of them. Even though I do, like I read treatises in a lot of the classes, but it takes a tremendous amount of time, you know, but I really want to be able to do audiobooks like you do. But I know the ones that I need to pick that are best for law, right? Just like you know the best ones to pick for understanding National Socialism, to understand the Jewish problem. That's your wheelhouse, which is great because I wouldn't know half this shit if I didn't find it and listen to it from the work you've done.
So we're hanging out, Vocational Science of Freedom, and you know that you're on Gab, right? You're on Odyssey and Rumble.
And
are you on X as well?
I'm not doing anything with X because of a couple of reasons. One, I don't get on any platform that demands a phone number because one, I don't have a smartphone and I never will get one. Two, I don't like having things connected to other devices of mine without my consent, basically. So I only ever do things that are able to keep me off the grid, if you will, from fucking, for the most part, from glow niggers. Now, if the NSA ever wanted to come after me, okay, fine. I'll probably have a red dot in the back of my head and there won't be fuck all I can do about it. But it keeps the rest of the glow niggers fucking away from me to a point where it's too much effort to try, right? Or whenever they keep running into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock or wall after wall after wall that I've put up, they're like, this isn't worth it. Whatever. Yeah. You know, like what happened with you and fucking Brown Tuber, like that dumb shit, right? It's not worth it for them. It's more effort than it gives them. So that's how I keep them out for the most part.
Right.
And yeah, my Gab
group, you have to make it work for you. That's all I've done. It's just turn shit into kung fu.
Yeah. Yeah. If anybody wants to join my Gab group, it's Gab group 30721. That's 30721. And then just look for Vocational Science of Freedom also, because I have my own Who I Am, which is just Zen Master on Gab. And then I have the VSOF on Gab as well.
Okay. Well, I blew up your Zen Master account today, so maybe you'll get some more followers.
It's all good. Yeah. I talk to a lot of people on Gab. Usually I talk to Racial Consciousness quite a bit. I talked to the other guest that you had on. Well, he wasn't on all that long ago. Trying to think of his name.
Could have been Weaver or Veil of Shadows.
I see Veil every once in a while. No, it was somebody else.
Gab's kind of a ghost town now. We got Huntress, Spy Hunter, a lot of people from Gab. There's lots of us we've had on the show. Yeah,
I still like Gab as a platform because Wanderer's Choice. That's him. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, he and I exchange stuff pretty regular basis on.
Yeah,
on
that's
Gab.
my nigga shit. Love that guy. Any final questions here for VSOF while he's been so kind to hang out with us for 3 whole hours? Amaru Ankas has been listening to Zen for over 5 years now. Highly recommend studying his content to learn how to navigate the legal sphere. His voice and teaching certainly resonate wisdom. I have to agree on that. You're going to be called a Kabbalah wizard. A lot of people are going to try to dox you now. Sorry about that.
By the way, that's the guy that they won't touch in Colorado.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's him. How are you working on Telegram? Is that a pretty good platform for you? Because that's another one that requires a phone number.
No, it's completely compromised. Everything is absolutely being reported to everybody. There's a Nuremberg there's a Nuremberg switch on every Telegram account where we've all been judged for Nuremberg 2.0.
Got it.
So they're definitely using it like every agency would.
Well, fuck that.
Yeah, I think France just admitted that they've had him in custody forever, and they have complete control over the company, and they just they volunteer anything any intelligence agencies want. They don't have to follow protocol. They'll just give it to them.
Until he wandered his dumbass into France and got scooped up, it wasn't like that. I mean,
Yeah, you wouldn't think if you're a CEO of a big company like that you'd have to worry about getting arrested when you landed somewhere, but
Oh, they don't give a fuck. You know what they did to him in Russia, right?
no, huh?
Oh, you don't know that whole backstory? Holy shit. Okay. Yeah, him and his, I believe it was his brother, they were really good at programming, obviously. And they had a platform in Russia, very much kind of akin to what Telegram is now. And the Russians wanted everything in the background and they started threatening him and everything else. And he's like, we got to get the fuck out of here. So they left. And then he created Telegram as like a response to it as being full free speech globally. And so that no one would have any control over it. Cause I think his servers were in Dubai, I think. And then of course what happens, he decides to land in one Jewish fucking democracy and poof, all that's gone all of a sudden.
Yeah, and complete political prisoner since. I think he's been in custody for I think a long time now, at least like a year. And
well, yeah, Julian Assange is another obvious example of that.
Great example.
So yeah,
and it's just punishment, process punishment, and relentless administrative stalking. You know, all of the terrorism that you can do to people without just like blowing people away in front of other people, which they'll also do that too if necessary, right? They're not above any of that.
They don't have any problem with that. No, yeah, like I said, the couple of special agents coming in, just taking care of the problem and leaving real quick and saying on the news, oh yeah, this guy killed himself with 2 shotgun shells to the back of the head.
yeah, exactly. That's a mystery.
Wonder how that happened.
Shit. Well, Vocational Science Freedom, thanks for coming onto the show for your second time. We're definitely going to get you booked again in the future. I'm sure you have much more things to cover, especially when it comes to common law, land titles, all that good shit, man. We're fucking going diving with VSOF, right?
Yeah, and if there's any particular rabbit hole you want to go down and dive into, that's fine. Just go ahead and hit me up prior to, and I'll make a whole class on it if you want.
Yeah, I'll try to figure out this FTJ thing too. I'll talk to Dave and see if I think you may have to. I'm not sure if you have to stream, but I think you may have to done a stream.
I wonder if that's what it was. Yeah. So okay. But yeah, if you get a hold of Dave, and please tell me, because if that's it, then fine. I'll just start streaming on there too. No big deal.
I'll maybe have an answer tonight. Hopefully we'll see how fast Dave can get back. Sometimes, man, he goes to bed at normal hours, but thanks for coming on. We're going to be back tomorrow morning with Fuhrer Friday, right, on the Wartime radio program. And then tomorrow night's Doom Depot. So, man, it's been a great week of guests, and it's a perfect way to round it out. Thanks a lot, man. And definitely give this guy a follow everywhere that you can. And check out his classes. They're very well thought out. And I think some of the more advanced content that's been made out there. Yeah, it's refreshing to see. I appreciate it. It's a white pill.
Yep. Thanks for having me on, man. And I will see all you guys hanging out at Night Nation tonight as well, as always.
Yeah, I'll be hanging out over there. Gonna go fuck with Nick.
Yep.
All right, man.